Alright, today we've got a new deck tech, which I've been alluding to for a while now. This one's going to be Tovolar, Dire Overlord. It's a spooky werewolf deck, good for the Halloween season. So this one is pretty cool. We've been waiting a long time to get a werewolf commander. I remember when, I think it was Eldritch Moon came out, it was teased there was going to be a legendary werewolf, but then ended up being Ulrich of the Crawling Horde. And that was just such a huge letdown because not only does the card not do anything for werewolves, it's also not a good commander. But I feel like with Tovolar, Wizards has kind of tried to make up for what they did to us then. So let's take a look at it. So this is a tribal deck, it's a werewolf deck. Tovolar is 1 red and a green, so 3 CMC. It's a 3/3 human werewolf. Whenever a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Also, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more wolves and or werewolves, it becomes night, then you transform any number of human werewolves you control. So this card does a lot. It fixes a lot of the problems with werewolves because traditionally werewolves are not great because it's just so hard to be able to flip them or transform them and keep them transformed when you want them to. So this kind of allows you to control that to some degree. And then also, this first ability I feel like is the best ability on the card. You can just draw so many cards with this. And let's take a look when it flips over. Not that different actually. The main thing is still this first ability, which is the same. Drawing cards off of damage from wolves or werewolves. Gets a little bit bigger. Then also you get this Kessig Wolf Run effect. If you're not familiar with it, Kessig Wolf Run is a land from original Innistrad, which does this on a land. You pay X red and a green. Well, actually, this is a little bit different. This is target wolf or werewolf you control gets +X/+O and trample till end of turn. Kessig Wolf Run is any creature. So, like I said, this is a tribal deck, and with Tovolar, I feel like what you want to do is go werewolf turn 1, or wolf or werewolf on turn 1 and 2, then play Tovolar and swing with those and start drawing a bunch of cards right away. So we're going to be playing, I feel like, as many 1-drop wolves or werewolves as we can, kind of regardless of if they're good or not, just by nature of being a 1-drop wolf or werewolf. Combined with Tovolar, that makes it pretty good. So we've got Village Messenger here. This one's actually pretty good because it has haste. It's just a 1/1 that flips into a 2/2 with Menace. So that's actually quite good with Tovolar because the Menace is relevant too because you want to connect and draw cards. Got a Young Wolf, just a 1/1 wolf with Undying. Wolfbitten Captive. This one, it's one of the ones that's not great. Originally, this was not in the deck. But then I kind of realized that I do want to be playing all of the 1-drop wolves and werewolves that I can. So I put this in the deck. It's got this ability where it can get +2/+2 till end of turn. It's funny, that's a rare. This exact card, the front side of this is on a card that's in the new Innistrad set, Midnight Hunt, right now. But then it flips over into a 2/2 that can turn into a 4/4. But anyway, we're playing that because it's a 1-drop werewolf. Same with Kessig Prowler. This is one of the Eldritch Moon werewolves. It has a different transform condition. So you can see all 3 of the transform conditions here, actually. I should mention that, I guess. So originally it was this. Beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, transform this. And then it transforms back if 2 or more spells were cast. So this was the original version of the transform mechanic. And this is the worst version of it, I guess, because it's just so hard to get it to work because your opponent can just stop this from happening by just casting an instant on your turn. And then in Eldritch Moon, we got this one where you just pay an activated cost to transform it, and then it does not transform back. So this one turns into this 4/4. Can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. And then we've got the new version, which is the Day and Night Bound, which you can see on Tovolar here. I think the Day and Night Bound it works pretty well. I'm pretty happy with that so far. This Reckless Waif, just a 1/1 that turns into a 3/2. I don't think it has any other abilities. No, it doesn't. And you'll see I'm taking these cards out and flipping them around. So that's because they're double-sided cards, right? And it's just important to note that with this deck, you really want to make sure your cards are double-sleeved because you'll be taking them out of the sleeves and flipping them around. So just if you want to protect your cards, make sure you double sleeve this deck. And also make sure that you're using opaque sleeves, because you don't want to be able to see, the card through your sleeve, right? This Universal Automaton, just, it's a wolf and a werewolf for 1 mana. Seems good. So that's all of the 1-drop ones. I think that's all of them. I'm not sure if I forgot any. If I did, though, you can let me know. But, 6 seems like a pretty good amount of 1-drops. So moving up to the 2-drops. So for the 2-drop creatures, they are going to be better than these. Like, they have more relevant abilities, because for 1-drops, it's just I'm playing it no matter what it does. But for these, it gets a little bit more selective. This card is quite good, though. This new one, Kessig Naturalist, 2/2. Whenever it attacks, you add red or green. And until end of turn, you don't lose mana as steps and phases end. So this can ramp you on a 2-drop werewolf. And when it flips, it still ramps you, but it also becomes a lord, gives your wolves and werewolves +1/+1. So this card is really good, actually, in this deck. The Duskwatch Recruiter. This card was all the hotness when it was in Standard, but it's a pretty good card. I'm actually mostly playing this for the backside, but it's a 2/2 for 2, it's fine. It has this activated ability. You can potentially get some card advantage if you get lucky and find a creature in the top 3 cards of your deck. But when it flips over, this also ramps you because it discounts your creature spells by 1, so that can be pretty decent, I think. And a Scorned Villager. This super beat up foil one, so I haven't replaced this yet. Maybe you saw on my previous video about werewolves where I showed some of the foil cards that I got in anticipation of making this deck. Pretty happy I got those now, because if you check the prices of a lot of the werewolves, they did go up quite a bit. So, I'm happy with getting these things. This one, I don't know, it's probably still cheap, it's just a common. But anyway, this is just a 2-drop werewolf that ramps you, but if it flips over, it ramps you by 2. So that's actually pretty decent. There's another piece of ramp here. Ulvenwald Captive. This is an Eldritch Moon one, so it's just a mana dork on 2, but if you get 7 mana, it's a steep cost, but you can transform this, and then it ramps you by 2 colorless, turns into a 4/6. And we've got... this card is really good. Outland Liberator. This does so much for just 2 mana. So it's a 2/2 werewolf, has Day and Night bound, but for 1 mana you can sack it, destroy an artifact or enchantment. That's actually really good. That's like the same ability as Caustic Caterpillar, which is a pretty big card in EDH. So I feel like just this alone is worth playing, but then you flip it over. Keeps that ability, but then it also gets the ability whenever it attacks, you can destroy an artifact or enchantment defending player controls. So, this is a repeatable artifact and enchantment removal on a creature that's a werewolf. So this card is really good in EDH specifically, I think. Got a Masked Vandal. I'm not super big on this card, but, it's a shapeshifter, so it is a werewolf. Like I said, I want to be playing lots of creatures on 1 and 2. Chances are if I play this on 2, its ability is not going to trigger because I won't have a creature in my graveyard. But at that point, I feel like it's still worth playing. But also, if I don't play it on 2, this is a good card to have late game, because you probably will be able to destroy, or I should say exile, an artifact or enchantment with its ability. One thing you may notice is I'm not playing any 1 mana dorks. Normally in any green deck, I would advocate for playing pretty much as many of those as you can, because getting a 1 mana dork does make a huge difference. However, with Tovolar, we're not looking to ramp from 1 to 3 so much. Like, I don't really want to go turn 1 Elvish Mystic, turn 2 Tovolar, because what does that really do for me? Tovolar will trigger off of itself, I believe. Yeah, it triggers off of itself, so that's decent, but I'm not really so keen on ramping from 1 to 3, because what I would prefer to do is, instead of playing an Elvish Mystic, I would just prefer to play turn 1 Werewolf, turn 2 Werewolf, turn 3 Tovolar, swing, draw 2 cards. I feel like that's probably better, and then I do have a lot of ramping here outside of 1-drops. I'm not really too interested in playing 1 mana ramp in this deck. Got a Mayor of Avabruck. This is a good werewolf. It was good in Standard. I think it might occasionally see play in Modern Humans, I'm not sure, but it's a human lord on one side. That is relevant, actually, because a lot of our werewolves are humans on their human side. Then it flips over into a wolf lord, I believe. A wolf and werewolf creatures you control get +1/+1, but it also can create some wolf tokens definitely relevant because Tovolar cares about wolves and werewolves. So that's another good 2-drop. Here's some 2-mana ramp, Sakura-Tribe Elder. Now it's a green deck staple in EDH. This card is pretty cool, Reckless Stormseeker, new werewolf. I wasn't super big on this originally either, but then I actually played with it, in an arena, and it's a lot better than I thought it was. So it's 3 mana here. It's a 2/3, so not great stats, but at the beginning of combat on your turn, a creature gets +1/+0 and haste until end of turn. That could target itself, so it's basically a 3/3 haste at the very minimum. When it flips over, it gets really good though. Beginning of combat on your turn, a creature you control gets +2/+0, trample, and haste until end of turn. That's a really big buff, and it's a 3/4, so this I feel like is quite good for 3 mana actually. On either side, it's giving something haste and a bonus, so yeah, I do like this card. This Realm Walker, it's another one of these shapeshifters, so it's a wolf and a werewolf, but also this can get us some card advantage. We can look at the top card of our library and cast creature spells of the chosen type from the top of the library. Chances are it's going to be werewolf. It could be wolf, I guess, but werewolf, 99% of the time, maybe even higher percent than that. Immerwolf. Until Tovolar was printed, I think that a lot of people were just using this as a werewolf commander and just making it a house rule that they were allowed to use this in place of a legendary creature, because this is kind of what you want in a werewolf commander. There was a lot of speculation about what Tovolar would have, or I suppose what the legendary werewolf would have, because it was teased there would be a legendary werewolf in this set, but we didn't know what it was. And a lot of people were saying it needs something similar to what this does, and that's what we got actually. So this has Intimidate. Actually, it is relevant with Tovolar. It's a 2/2 for 3. Other wolf and werewolf creatures you control get +1/+1, but also non-human werewolves you control can't transform. So yeah, that's the important part, is it allows you to control when your wolves and werewolves transform. Especially with the old ones, it prevents your opponents from making them transform back when you don't want them to. And then it's also got this lore effect. Got a Geier Reach Bandit. This card is pretty cool. It's a 3/2 with haste for 3. Then also, when it flips, it's quite good. Whenever a werewolf enters the battlefield under your control, you can transform it. So, it's kind of like a Nightbound type of thing, right? Like, it basically is the same as it being Night with the new werewolves. They just enter transformed. So this card is pretty cool. It's another one that allows you to control when your werewolves transform. This is one that I like a lot. Hermit of the Natterknolls. It's just a 2/3 for 3. Actually, I was thinking of a different card. I do like this card a lot, though, anyway. Whenever an opponent casts a spell during your turn, draw a card. It's pretty decent, right? I feel like in a 4-player game, you could draw quite a few cards off of this, potentially. Especially if it transforms, because when it transforms, it says, whenever an opponent casts a spell during your turn, draw 2 cards. So, I don't know, I feel like this card can do a lot of work for just 3 mana. A Daybreak Ranger. This is kind of removal on a creature, repeatable removal at that, which is nice. On the human side, you can tap it to do 2 damage to a creature with flying. Not great, but definitely relevant. Could be useful, but when it flips over is when it's really good. Pay red and tap it to have this 4/4 fight a creature. So that can take care of a lot of small creatures. Here's what I feel like is potentially the best wolf/werewolf in the deck. Unfortunately, it's not a werewolf, but it is a wolf. Nightpack Ambusher. It's another one that was super big in Standard, but this card just does so much. For 4 mana, it's a 4/4 flash, gives your wolves and werewolves +1/+1. Then at the beginning of your end step, if you didn't cast a spell, you make a wolf token. But the thing is, you want to be playing a lot of cards on your opponent's turn with werewolves, they flip by you not playing cards on your turn, right? So this just fits right in with that theme, because it has flash, and it rewards you for not playing a spell on your turn. It just does pretty much everything you want to. This card is really good in this deck. It's another thing that you'll see later is because we want to not play spells on our turn in order to meet the werewolf trigger requirement, we're playing several cards that allow us to play our spells at instant speed. Here's a Huntmaster of the Fells. I'm pretty happy I picked up this one in foil. This is the old Dark Ascension one too. It's just a 2/2 for 4. When it enters the battlefield though, or transforms, you make a 2/2 wolf and you gain 2 life. And when it flips into the wolf side, it has trample now, and when it transforms, it deals 2 damage to an opponent and up to 1 creature that player controls. So this one is cool. This one and also Ulrich, those are cool because they reward you for having it flip into either side. So, you know, even if it does basically change to day when you don't want it to, you still get something out of this by when it changes back into the human side. Afflicted Deserter. This is one that I'm not 100% sold on, but I feel like it's probably good enough because this is repeatable artifact removal on a creature. It does nothing on this side, it's just 3/2 for 4, which is super crappy. But when it's flipped over, whenever it transforms, you can destroy target artifact and then do 3 damage to that artifact's controller. So, you know, you want this to be flipping back and forth a lot, which could happen, especially if you can control it with things like the Celestis. I feel like this card is worth playing just because this is repeatable artifact removal on a creature. Here's one that I think is pretty cool. Instigator Gang. Old one from Innistrad. Front side also kind of crappy. 4 mana, 2/3 attacking creatures you control get +1/+0, so it's kind of a 3/3. When it flips over, it's quite good though. Trample 5/5, and now attack creatures you control get +3/+0. +3/+0 is a big buff. You know, it's basically an 8/5 trample, but you know, this gives all your little creatures, which actually turn into big creatures when they transform, a really big buff. So, you know, I'm a fan of this card, even though for 4 mana on the front side, it's not great. Here's a non-wolf/werewolf, Neath of the Dire Hunt. You might see that there's a small kind of fight theme in this deck, like things like Daybreak Ranger. I think there's another card also that allows you, oh yeah, Ulrich. Those allow you to repeatedly fight. And this is kind of like the fight tribal commander. So whenever one or more creatures you control fight or become blocked, draw a card. And then at the beginning of your combat on your turn, you can pay 3. If you do, double target creature's power until end of turn. So this, I feel like it works really well in this deck because, you know, it works well in basically any green-red creatures deck, which this is, but also it has, you know, a bit of the fight synergy in it. So I feel like this is a cool inclusion. Make some more room here. There's another card that I feel like goes in any green creature deck. Toski, Bearer of Secrets, such a good card. Can't be countered, indestructible, 1/1, but the reason you play this card is because it says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So it's kind of like the same ability as Tovolar, except for it's any creature, not just wolf or werewolf. And you know, it's indestructible, can't be countered. Very good card. Here's the one I was thinking of earlier. This card, I like it a lot. It's a star for 5. Sage of Ancient Lore. On the front side, its power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in your hand. So, you know, probably it's going to end up being like a 3 or 4 power, maybe only 2, but when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, so that's nice, gives it a little buff, and drawing a card is always good on creatures. When it flips over is when it gets really interesting, though. It's now a star Vigilance Trample. However, now its power and toughness are equal to the total number of cards in all players' hands. So just think that in a 4-player commander game, that's going to be pretty big, right? Like there are some games where you have one opponent that just goes nuts with like Reliquary Tower and drawing a bunch of blue cards. You know, this could end up being like a 20/20 Vigilance Trample plus, right? So I feel like this is a nice finisher in this deck. Not so good in a 2-player game in 1v1. It's fine still, I think. Like it does draw you a card, but in 4-player games, I feel like this is really cool. So here's Ulrich. This was the original legendary werewolf that we got. Wait, Huntmaster isn't legendary, is it? No, it's not. Yeah, so this was the original legendary werewolf from Eldritch Moon, which was a disappointment when it came out, because as you can see, it does nothing for werewolves. When it enters the battlefield or transforms, a creature gets +4/+4 till end of turn, so it could come in as an 8/8. Kind of doesn't matter if it doesn't have haste, but you can give it haste. You can give it something else +4/+4 though. And then when it transforms, it's a 6/6 now, and you can have this fight a non-werewolf creature you don't control. So this is I feel like quite a good card to have in the 99 of this deck. But it's just not a great red-green commander, and it's not a good werewolf commander. But it does fit very well in here. It is a very powerful effect because it's repeatable removal, and repeatable +4/+4 bonus. I think it worked quite well in the 99 of Tovolar. This card is awesome, Tovolar's Huntmaster. A lot of times it's basically a better Grave Titan. So it's 6 mana 6/6. It's a big boy. When it enters the battlefield, you make 2/2/2 green wolf creature tokens. So far, the same as Grave Titan. When you flip it over, whenever this enters the battlefield or attacks, you make 2 wolves. And then it has this additional ability: pay 4 mana, and another target wolf or werewolf you control fights a creature you don't control. So like this card just does so much. It repeatedly gives you 2/2 wolves. It's removal on a creature. It's like I say it's kind of like a better Grave Titan, but it's not that simple because you do have to jump through some hoops in order to make this the same as a Grave Titan, because unless it transforms, it only makes the things when it enters the battlefield, not when it attacks. But if you can transform this and keep it transformed, then it is a better Grave Titan. So very good in this wolf/werewolf deck. Up on the top end here, yeah, this is the last creature, Kogla. I just like including this in any green/whatever creature-oriented commander deck. I just like this card. It's a big fatty 6 mana 7/6, but it's repeatable artifact and enchantment removal. Whenever it attacks, destroy an artifact or enchantment depending player controls. Also, it's removal on a creature, so when it enters the battlefield, you fight up to 1 creature you don't control. And then it has this other ability, pay 2, return a human you control to its owner's hand, and this gains indestructible until end of turn. That's actually quite relevant in this deck because a lot of our creatures here are humans. So I feel like this actually fits quite well in this deck. I like Kogla. So that's all the creatures. I'm going to make some room. I'm playing actually more Planeswalkers in this deck than I typically would in a commander deck. But I think they all work pretty well. So there's Domri here. This is one that I also would play in pretty much any red-green creature deck. Because for just 3 mana, it does a lot. You can +1 to ramp, add red or green. Creature spells you cast this turn can't be countered. Has the passive effect of creatures you control get +1/+0, and then for -2 you can have something fight, so that that fight fits in with the fight synergy. This just is a lot for 3 mana. I'm actually a pretty big fan of this Planeswalker. Not Domri in particular, but this iteration of Domri, I should say. So as I was saying earlier, we're playing a few cards that allow us to cast our spells at instant speed in order to help with keeping our werewolves transformed, and that's what Vivian does here. This Vivian, Champion of the Wilds. Mostly playing this for the passive effect. You can cast creature spells that slowly add flash. Also, +1 until your next turn, a creature gets Vigilance and Reach. Not a great +1, but it's fine. And then the -2 could be useful, could get us some card advantage. So I feel like it's worth an inclusion. Like, I'm not super high on this Planeswalker, but I think it's good enough to put in here. And playing Planeswalkers is fun, right? So, if there's a Planeswalker that's good enough to play, I'm probably going to play it. This one, though, it's a 4 mana, gets 4 loyalty, it has Day and Night bound, so it can flip around. +1 till your next turn, you can cast creature spells as though they had flash. So, same ability as Vivian. But also, each creature you control enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. It's pretty good. -3, make 2/2/2 green wolves, which is actually pretty nice. I mean, for just 4 mana, you can immediately -3, get 2 wolf tokens, and have a Planeswalker left over. That seems really good to me. But then when it flips over also, it can ramp you. You can +2, add red-green, so it ramps you by 2, which is quite good, I think. And probably the least relevant ability on this card, I think, is 0. At least relevant in Commander. Till end of turn, this becomes a 5/5 werewolf creature with trample, indestructible, and haste. But what I really like about this is that for just 4 mana, you can make 2 tokens, have a planeswalker left over, and ramp yourself by 2. I feel like that's a lot for 4 mana. Speaking of ramping by 2 for 4 mana, we've got Chandra, Torch of Defiance. That's what I like the best about this card, is the ramp ability here. But also you can get some card advantage with this other +1. This is a removal on a planeswalker for -3, and if you get to emblem it, then it's a really good win condition. So we got some enchantments here too. There's some pretty interesting enchantments in this deck. So there's this Full Moon's Rise. Finally gets some time to shine from original Innistrad. Werewolf creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample. But also, you can sack this and regenerate all werewolf creatures you control. That does a lot for 2 mana. I mean, +1/+0 and trample is pretty good, right? But then also being able to protect your creatures from like a board wipe or something, it's pretty good for just 2 mana. There's a fairly new card here in Ranger class. This, it's a super popular card, right? It's kind of all the hotness right now, but it does make a wolf token, buffs your creatures, gets you card advantage. It seems great in this deck, especially, for just 2 mana. I am a fan of it. Got a Beastmaster Ascension, kind of a way to end the game, making all of our creatures super huge with +5/+5. Rhythm of the Wild can stop our creatures from being countered. Also gives all our creatures Riot. This is a pretty popular card that I feel like is a good inclusion in this deck. Asceticism, nice way to protect all of our creatures, gives them all hexproof basically. Can also regenerate some creatures for just 2 mana. It's pretty nice. Here's a new one. Unnatural Growth. This card is, it was super hyped up during spoiler season. I think it's the hype has died down a bit, but I do think this card is very good. So it's for 5 mana. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control till end of turn. It says beginning of each combat, not yours. So, during combat is when your power and toughness matters the most, right? So it kind of just doubles the power and toughness of your creatures all the time. Like, it's weird to say that because it's not all the time, but doubles it during every combat, even when your opponent's attack, right? So it does a lot. Like I said, this card was kind of overhyped, I feel like, but it's still very good. I've got some removal here in a Braid and Beast Within. Braid is artifacts or creatures, Beast Within for anything. Some more removal and Blasphemous Act. Nice board wipe there. We're going to protect our creatures with Heroic Intervention. Well, protect our permanents, I should say. Giving them all hexproof and indestructible. Here's a Moon Mist, another card which, like Full Moon's Rise, probably would never see play in any deck outside of this deck. For instant, transform all humans. Prevent all combat damage that will be dealt this turn by creatures other than wolves or werewolves. This does a lot of work in this deck, actually. For just 2 mana at instant speed, we can flip over all of our werewolves, can surprise our opponents with that. And it's also a fog effect for basically everyone except for us, because unless someone else is playing a wolf/werewolf deck, chances are it's going to be fog for everyone except for us. Return of the Wild Speaker. For this card in this deck, I'm actually playing it mostly for the second ability. Like, it's kind of weird because it says non-human creatures. But you may notice when your werewolves flip over, they're not human anymore. It's a werewolf. So if you can play this when you have some transformed werewolves, +3/+3 at instant speed is a very big buff. But then also, it does have the other ability, draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control. It's a very popular card for Commander. Some more artifact removal in Ancient Grudge. You can reuse it from the graveyard. As well as Frozen Grip and Decimate. I'm happy to be able to play this card because I got the Secret Lair and I think I kept all but one of the cards from it just because I think they look super cool. So it's nice to have a deck that I can put this card in. Decimate, it's a pretty popular card for Commander, right? Destroy an artifact, creature, enchantment, and land. The thing with that is you need to have targets for all 4 of those in order to cast this. But it's a popular Commander card, and I'm happy to be able to play this one. So now Like I said earlier, I don't have 1 mana ramp, but I do still have a lot of ramp. There was some ramp in the form of creatures, planeswalkers. Here's the more traditional ramp, though. We got Farseek, 3 visits, Kodama's Reach, Cultivate, Migration Path, so the 5 green ones there. And we got Jessica's Will, that is ramp. It can be very big ramp, right? The first ability, and then also some card advantage. What else have we got here? Unnatural Moonrise, this is a new card. It's a sorcery for 2 mana. Kind of does a lot, so it becomes night. It's another one that allows you to control when your wolves are transformed. Until end of turn, a creature gets +1/+0 and gains trample until end of turn, and also whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So some card advantage. I believe this does stack with, this stacks with Tovolar, so if you have Tovolar out and you use this on something and you connect, you're going to draw 2 cards. It also has flashback for just 4 mana, so I feel like it's a good inclusion. Like it's not a huge effect, but I think it's definitely good in this deck. Here's a finisher in Overwhelming Stampede. It's the Crater Hoof Behemoth effect. Until end of turn, creatures we control get trample and +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures we control. So if we have some, I don't know, not even that many creatures, if we have like 4 or 5 creatures in play, just slam this and attack someone, chances are it'll be good enough to take them out of the game there. We've got a few artifacts, not as many as I would normally like to play, but there are some in here. There's only the 1 artifact ramp though in Soul Ring, because we're playing green, so we don't really need to rely on artifact ramp, but we are playing Soul Ring. Got both Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves, because this deck is built around the commander, so we definitely want to protect Tovolar. That's what we use these for. Got a Sword of Feast and Famine. I feel like it's still the best sword. And I'm a fan of playing swords, so why not play it in a deck which is based around creatures? We can equip it to any number of things and swing in with it. Second best sword, I think, Sword of Hearth and Home. Gives us pro green and white, +2/+2, can flicker our stuff and also ramp us. Kind of a repeatable ramp and growth type of effect. Here's the Celestis, which I mentioned earlier. So this, I think, is one of the key cards in this deck because it does a lot for this deck. It allows us to control whether it's day or night, and we have a lot of werewolves which use the day and night bound mechanic, so we can kind of manipulate them that way. It's a pretty decent mana rock for 3 mana. Well, it's kind of an average mana rock, I guess, for 3 mana. It taps to add 1 mana of any color. But then also, when it becomes day or night, we gain a life and we can draw a card and then discard a card. So, it repeatedly lets us loot, gain life. It's a mana rock, and it lets us control whether it's day or night. So this does a lot on 1 card. I think it's a very useful card in this deck. So that's it, other than the lands. But we are playing quite a few utility lands, I think. So we've got both Bonder's Enclave and War Room. They're pretty similar. They're both card advantage on a land. You can pay 3 and tap it to draw a card. Bonder's Enclave is activate only if you have a creature with power 4 or greater. War Room is you have to pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity, so in this deck 2. But, both of these are colorless lands, which get us some card advantage. This is kind of a cool one for this deck. Winding Canyons. Like I said earlier, we want to be able to cast our spells at instant speed. This is a land that lets us do that. It's an old one from, I believe that's Weatherlight, right? Anyway, only adds colorless, which kind of sucks, but we can pay 2 and tap this, and then until end of turn, we can cast creatures anytime we could play instants. So, it's pretty cool. It's like the Vivian/Arlen effect on a land. Got a Kessig Wolf run in here. Normally I would not play this card, but I'm going slightly more thematic than I normally would with this deck, because if I was playing this, to be maximum competitiveness, I wouldn't play this card. It's not a bad card, it's just, I feel like we don't really need it, especially since we have this effect on Tovolar already. But, I want to have some fun with this, so we're playing Kessig Wolf run. You can tap it at a colorless, or you can pay X red green and give a creature +X/+0 until end of turn and trample. It is definitely a good card. You know, it can be kind of a way to force through the damage that you need to end the game on a land. But, you know, it's fine. But it does say wolf on it, and it fits in within a Strahd, so we're playing it. Got a Castle Garenbrig. It's just, I feel like this is one that you can play in any green commander deck, basically. Maybe unless it's like 3 or 4 colors, but in a 2-color commander deck that has green, I feel like this is worth playing. It's ramp on a land, right? Got a Yavimaya. This is one where probably you would play it in any commander deck that's playing green, I think. It makes all of your lands forests, in addition to the other types. Fixes your mana quite well there. It does work for your opponents too, though. Yeah, for all lands, so just keep note of that. You don't necessarily want to play that if it's going to help your opponent and not help you. Then we got a bunch of dual lands here. Command Tower, not really a dual land, but it does function as a dual land in this deck. But we got Command Tower, Copperline Gorge, Grove of the Burden Willows, Rootbound Crag, Cinderglade, Game Trail, Firelit Thicket, Crag Crown, Pathway, Stomping Ground, Rockfall Vale, that's a new one from Midnight Hunt. The Wooded Foothills, Sheltered Thicket, Fabled Passage, I count that as a dual land. And then a bunch of mountains and forests. And since I'm going a little bit more thematic with this deck, obviously I'm going to play the Eternal Night lands. That's what they're called, right? Yeah, I think that's it. But they do look really cool. I do like this land style. Got a couple foil ones here, I think. I probably would play these lands in some other decks too. Yeah, I like these ones, so we're playing them here. So that's the Tovolar deck. You know, like I said, this is a green-red creature deck. There are lots of green-red creature decks, but I feel like this is one of the better ones. Like, it's definitely a fun deck. I'm not sure if it's super competitive, but I think it's pretty good at least. And, you know, it plays different than the other green-red creature decks because it has the whole transforming creatures thing that it's all about. I think it's a cool deck, and it's nice to finally have a good werewolf commander, so we don't have to be playing Immerwolf as a commander anymore. But I like this deck a lot. You know, if you have suggestions, I would be happy to hear them. There are definitely a lot of werewolves which I'm not playing, because we've had, what, 3 Innistrad blocks at this point, and all of them have had werewolves, so there are some cards that I could include, which I didn't, but I feel like I've got, you know, all of the best werewolves in here. But anyway, you know, let me know what you think. If you have any suggestions or comments, regardless, I'd be happy to read them. Otherwise, though, if you're still watching, thanks for watching. It'd be cool if you can like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you later.